Welcome everyone to our town hall on classroom management in the current climate. My name is Kimberly Stankovich. I'm the Communication Studies Department Chair, and I'm also the Faculty Professional Development and Teaching Innovations Coordinator. But if you know me, yes, if you know me, you know that giving me a microphone and putting me in front of a crowd is a very risky endeavor. It's a dangerous thing to do. So I actually jotted down some notes to keep me focused and on task while I'm up here. But a big thank you to everybody, again, like Kim said, for coming out and attending this town hall, whether you're here in person or watching on the live stream. It is much appreciated. And it is being recorded, so if you missed something or wish you had written something down, don't worry, because you can go back and watch the recording. And I really think it's moments like this when we all come together to support each other that makes Saddleback such a gem of Orange County. I think this is a wonderful place to work, so I'm really excited about today. I would say that this town hall was created in response to an uptick in the number of faculty who have been reaching out to administration for guidance or just sharing their experiences where they are feeling unsettled and concerned for their safety in the classroom. So I'm hoping that after we all participate in this today, you'll feel safer in the classroom and feel prepared even to provide a safe environment for everybody involved in that interaction, and feel like you are better prepared to respond to disruptive, distressed, or threatening students. And President Stern had an email yesterday, and he noted that we're in an odd time right now where aggressiveness and anger seems to be rearing its ugly head in all venues, all contexts, and that includes academia. So to tackle this issue, we have an outstanding panel. I mean, check this out. We have all-stars here. So what I'm going to do is I'll introduce them just briefly, and then I have some questions I prepared to guide the conversation. But panelists, at any time, based on your experience, if you think there's something that really needs to be said, should be said, please share your wisdom with us. And then my plan is to keep the last 15 minutes open so we can turn it over to all of you for questions. All right. So we have Suki Fisher, who is faculty in English, correct? We have Sumaya McCleave, Mathematics Department Co-Chair. We have Penny Skaff, Dean of Counseling Services. Jennifer LaBounty, our Vice President for Student Services. Lisa Schenitzki, Psychological Health Services Supervisor. And Patrick Higa, our Chief of Police. All right. So my first question will go to really the whole panel, and you can just show a hand if you would like to tackle the question first. So how do you, as faculty members, managers, or campus police, approach identifying signs of distress or disruptive behavior in students? Can you share specific examples that highlight your observations and decision-making process?
Okay, there we go. I think, honestly, students let you know. It's not really something where you have to identify them. They tell you many times, and it might be a while before you actually hear them, but they tell you. That's all I have to say. Oh, wait, specifics, right? Well, no, this is not part of Saddleback, but probably my very first semester teaching when I was in grad school, I had a student tell me in his essay, because he said, I don't know what to write about. And he said, I didn't get to go to my prom. And I said, okay, why don't you write about why you didn't get to go to your prom? And it turned out he did not get to go to his prom because he had been suspended because he had written a hit list of all the people he wanted to kill in his high school. So that was fun. But he told me. Yes. Oh, no. Well, no, it's like, did I submit a report? I was actually, one of the things that I was thinking about is how many structures we have in place that we didn't have. And so I did, but ultimately the decision at the university was that I was the one who had to take care of it. Meaning just tell him he should go to counseling. Yeah.
I can speak to the distressed student piece. I think that, the fact that so many people are in this room today is evidence of how much our campus cares about our students. And the number of care reports that we get on a daily basis, too, is evidence of how much we care about our students. And so One of the mottos we hear a lot is, if you see something, say something. And we really do want to hear when you are concerned about a student who might appear to be distressed. So a lot of times that presents as a change in previous behavior, right? So we're hoping that a lot of you sort of know your students and recognize them. And when you see a change in their appearance, maybe a decline in their hygiene, a change in their classroom participation, maybe some frequent absences, or maybe like Suki said, they come right out and tell you that they're struggling with this or that. That is a student who's likely distressed, and we would want to reach out to that student and see how we might be able to support them. So when we do get a care report on a student, that falls under that category. One of our staff reaches out. They try to make contact with the student. Ideally, we get the student to come in and meet with one of us, and we sit down, find out what's going on with them, and then connect them to the many resources that we have available on campus, or perhaps in the campus community, if that is most appropriate.
Okay, so from a code of conduct perspective, first, that's Administrative Reg 5500. And so that's something that, you may not want to read this document, but you can find in the student handbook, which can be found in multiple places, including the counseling homepage. We have the most current, every year we produce one, the student handbook. And in that, it very simplifies the code of conduct. And so, so for disruption, we look to this AR. And so where Dr. Schenitzki speaks to a care report where you can submit it and the health center can make attempts to reach the student, when we're looking at an actual code of conduct violation, or there's, you suspect that there's been a code of conduct violation, then that student is in fact required to meet with me. So when we get the official code of conduct, if it's formal, then we reach out to the student and they meet, and we, just as you would anticipate, we kind of understand what's going on. So often Dr. Schenitzki and I work in combination. We'll find often that the disruption has something to do with something else that's happening in their life. So, and I kind of take on this assignment for the last many years, it feels, we don't have bad students, we have good students having bad days. But that still requires us to document. So disruption, some of the common ones where code of conduct would be definitely the number one, like David Letterman, I need to throw my pen. The most common would be academic dishonesty, and in there's a breakdown about that. Disruptive behavior, and for you to think about that, to think about your job in that class, be it online and in person, is to teach. So if someone is making it where you have to stop doing your job, which is to be teaching that class, then that can be considered a disruption. I will say that we have students that have accommodations through DSPS, but there is no accommodation that supersedes the code of conduct. So always want you to be cognizant of that. Probably the most important thing I'd want to say is, if in doubt, give me a call, send me an email. Most of you have my phone number by now, my cell. Send me a text. And I would much rather have that than, just to be there for you. But the most common would be academic dishonesty when it comes to AR 5500, then disruptive or willful behavior, and then unsafe behavior. That's becoming quite common. Unsafe behavior in a lab, and we've really broadened that. You may be in a culinary class, and that we'll look at as like a lab environment. It doesn't have to just be in chemistry. So again, if you feel like you're trying to do your job, which is to teach, for most of you, and you have to stop, then it could be that there's a code of conduct violation. But we would also always encourage, have you talked to the student? Did you say, like, getting up and leaving the class multiple times, that's a disruption? Like, first talk with your student, but then after that, if nothing's changing in the behavior, then submitting a code of conduct report.
Can I add to that? The only thing I was going to add is if you're like, also maybe just talk to other people, like talk to your dean, talk to your colleagues. I think sometimes, and I was hearing people talking before we began that some faculty are concerned about like what would happen if they do submit a report. I think the other side of it though is that you could possibly feel that there's something wrong with me, there's something wrong with how I'm managing my classroom, and this is my fault and I need to take care of it, and it's not your fault. And so like just talk to other people, we've all been there.
I just also wanted to add, I just want to reaffirm the importance of reporting. A lot of times we get nervous and we think, does this really constitute, something that I should bring to the team? But you have to remember, we have a bit team that we're going to talk about it. And if we see like, this probably really isn't a conduct issue, maybe it's going to be care instead, that it's been submitted as conduct, but maybe we're seeing that this student is in distress. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to send it over to that team. So we do our due diligence and we look at every report and we talk about it and we make sure that we're not being biased, that we are, looking at it as a team and we're discussing it and making sure that it's going through the appropriate channels. But we're also here to support you. So if you have questions or concerns or you're worried about what you're going to report, reach out to us. As Penny said, reach out to Penny, reach out to Lisa, reach out to my staff, to my team, to me directly. If you have a question, I'm here to support as well. And we just want to make sure that not only are our classrooms a safe place, they're an enjoyable place to be, and that as faculty, you're not feeling, apprehensive or nervous or anxious or whatever that may be, and that you're able to teach in the way that, as Penny said, that you need to, so that everybody in the class has this wonderful learning experience. So just feel free to report. Don't worry about reporting.
I think to make though clear, there's a distinction. So with a care report, you can submit that and that can be anonymous, and Lisa and her team will make a call and the student doesn't know who made the report. It's just, hey, Saddleback College is calling, how are you doing? When you submit a code of conduct, the student has the right to know when they meet, like, where is this coming from? 9 times out of 10, they know. But I can't say, oh, I can't tell you. So that's really important. And I don't want that, I would hate for that to like prevent you from reporting. But just, I think that helps you to understand like this is important enough that we're going to need to talk about it. And they need to know it's coming from that class. And we work with faculty, with our classified professionals, with anyone on the campus. If there's ever any concern for safety, we work, as Dr. LaBounty shared, in that BIT environment. It's a college-wide effort, campus police. But I do want you all to know, if you don't know already, that the Code of Conduct report, that is not an anonymous document. That's something where the student will know this is where it came from. And again, they usually know already.
I just want to add, sometimes faculty request like what to do before you might submit a care report or a discipline report. And if you're noticing, on any given day, a student who looks like they might be distressed, or a student who might be disruptive on a given day. And some of the thoughts we have on that is to, pull the student aside and ask them, are you doing okay? And mention exactly what it is that's concerning you. I've noticed that you've missed a couple assignments, or you've been absent lately, or I've noticed that, you're not participating as much. It's okay to talk to the students and ask them these questions if that's something that you feel might be appropriate, something that you might be comfortable doing. And students generally appreciate it. They feel that caring concern. So you can, and that's, same for disruption. If you've got a student who's in the classroom and they're beginning, you could make like an overall, announcement to the entire class, letting them know, hey, this isn't okay if you're on your phone and I'm trying to do this or that or whatever. Kind of make a general announcement about a behavior that might be disruptive. And then if it continues, you can pull that student aside. You can set up a time to meet with them and maybe give them an opportunity to understand what it is they're doing that is disruptive, right? And so sometimes there are things that you can do in the moment that might help identify students that then do need to be, provided with a little bit more support.
Okay, so you addressed another question I was going to ask. So I want to get into this thought. And maybe Sumaya, you could help, or any of you who have been working with a student who in that moment, they're bigger than you, they're louder than you, they seem stronger than you. We just had an associate faculty in my area apparently get cussed out by a student. So in that moment, what techniques would you say have worked for you to successfully de-escalate a situation? Or what advice would you give to faculty who in this moment right now, I'm standing here and I'm scared, what's my next move?
I would say that if you have the right opportunity, if someone is in your face, if someone is upset, right, and they're yelling and they're obviously in distress, I think a great de-escalation technique is to kind of bring your own voice down, to kind of let the student know that you're listening to them and you're hearing them. Ideally, you're going to get them to a place where you can sit down privately so that the student can sort of air their concerns. Much of the time, de-escalation just involves being heard, being listened to and being heard. They've got some kind of gripe, some kind of something that's set them off, and they want to know that their concerns are being taken seriously. In some cases, that just might not be doable. If you're not comfortable doing that, or if you are feeling frightened yourself, I would say 4444. Campus police can certainly come in, and we've called on them many, many times when we've had students that we're unable to de-escalate, and they can come in, and your team is fantastic at being, very student-centered. They don't come in, to
SWAT-like.
No, they don't come in SWAT-like, they don't come in, guns drawn, but they're very skilled at de-escalating a situation. So if you're not comfortable or feeling safe to do it yourself and to just provide that student with an opportunity to sit down and talk and to listen, you can always call on our campus police. We do it all the time.
Yeah, as long as we're talking about this, I want to make sure everybody understands that landlines anywhere on the campus, if you dial 44 or push the button, who dials anymore, 4444, it goes straight to our dispatch, like all calls do, but it has a different ringtone on our end, so we know it's an emergency. Now, just to go over some real basics again, we use the code word Mr. Armstrong. If you feel that you don't want to let the person in front of you know that you're calling us, as soon as our dispatcher hears that, we're sending an officer to that location, right? And so that's all you have to say. It works here, and IBC does the same thing also, right? So Mr. Armstrong. Every once in a while we get strong arm, but it's Mr. Armstrong, okay? So we will respond to those things, and it's only for landlines. Now, just to give you, hopefully, a peek in the future, we're looking at the phones that we have right now, the Cisco phones, has a bunch of buttons on either side of the screen. IT's looking into developing a panic button on those buttons. So all you have to do is push that button, and it sends a message to our dispatch saying someone's in distress at the location where that phone is. So we're not there yet, but we're in conversations with Informacast to get that set up. I know IBC's looking at the same thing. Okay, so those are worst-case scenarios. If you feel like there's nothing you can do and it is threatening, absolutely call us. Even if you're kind of, I'm not sure, our officers will show up and they'll talk to them. They'll talk to whoever's there, right? It doesn't mean that we're arresting anybody, right? But we're going to have that conversation. It's better that we do it, especially if there's a potential for danger. It's better that we do it than you have to guess, well, is this person really unhinged right now, or is just having a bad day? Let us know. We'll come and talk to the person, and we'll figure it out one way or the other.
And do you want to highlight what happens if they decide to dial 911?
So on our campus, if you call 911, it's going to go to Sheriff's Dispatch, which they call us because they know we're right here on campus. Our response time's a whole lot quicker than the deputies, and the deputies here in Mission Viejo are great. They respond pretty quickly. But once they get on our campus, it's a different story. Now they have to figure out, well, what building, right, and what floor, and things like that. So our response time's a whole lot better because we're here. So you can call, but our preference is if it's emergency, get a hold of us, 4444, and because they're like I said, Sheriff's Department's going to call us anyway. So yeah, absolutely give us a call.
What about within a woods of the campus, class 4?
Their numbers are going to be like any standard phone, and it's going to be Sheriff's Department response. They have that jurisdiction. So whatever protocols that facility has, I'm sure they have something. I would follow that, any off-site locations.
Okay, thank you. And then we're going to leave the last 15 minutes for questions from the audience. So if you can make a note of your questions and hold on to them for us, we'll get to those questions at the end. Okay, for my faculty sitting here, if you, I want to talk about online teaching too, because some of the faculty who have come forward with feelings of concern, they're feeling this in their online classes. And maybe it's in the discussion, or maybe it's in an email. So my question is, how do you distinguish signs of distress, disruptive behavior, or potential threats in an online learning environment compared to a traditional classroom setting? And I address this to the faculty, but if you have advice or tips for us as well from our other panelists, of course, please share.
So I haven't had any disruptive students in my online course, but definitely students in distress, and it might just be the fact that they're learning math and that's distressing. So I think being mindful about creating an environment, whether it's in person or online, where the students feel like they're being welcomed, that they belong in the classroom, to kind of just like start off even before the semester begins. I know Michelle Pacansky-Brock is coming to campus on Friday to talk about the liquid syllabus, and she has a course called Humanizing Online STEM, where it's, the whole point of it is to just make students feel like that they're part of a community, even though it's an online course, and that their instructor is a human being who's going to interact with them, and that none of us are perfect and we're all learning together. So then I think creating that environment where students feel safe, then if they are in distress, which again, for an online course, it might just be that they stopped showing up and they stopped attending. For in-person too, like you said, just the attendance drops off. And so it's a sign that they're in distress and that they need someone to reach out to them. And I found that usually students, especially in discussion boards, they tend to be kind to one another. You know, so it would be noticeable if somebody isn't, and then a sign that there's, you know, an issue, most likely unrelated to the class.
And I didn't ask for that plug for this very great presentation that's happening on Friday, March 1st, but thank you for reminding us that Dr. Michelle Pacansky-Brock is coming.
I'm going to go back to my thing that they usually tell me. I had a student 2 or 3 summers ago who was having mental issues, and he was in a creative writing class, and he was just saying, look, I'm struggling. And so we ended up just talking on the phone because he was, and we got him through the class. But in terms of like aggressive, I haven't had like super aggressive online, but one thing I have noticed that occurs more in an online class than in a face-to-face class is the student aggressive about their grade. like you are being very, like, and it's not often, but they'll say, oh, you're grading me hard, like you, and the best way that I've found to manage that is, and this is actually a technique that a colleague told me, is I have a statement that I have ready, so that if a student accuses me of being too hard on them, or if I'm grading them unfairly, then it's just all of my grading is in accordance with the course outline of record as indicated by the state chancellor. Like throw a bunch of like really official language at them and they don't know what to do with it. But it takes it off of I'm being directly to you, and it's saying more along the lines of, look, I'm just doing my job.
Suki brings something up that I think is really important, your syllabus. So when I get, and I have unfortunately had a lot of reports for disruption online in the chat, the way in which the student is writing to the instructor, the way in which they're writing to their other students, and it goes beyond Chat GPT, like just their language, their tonality, etc. And the first thing I'll ask, and I see some faces, so I've asked you, can I have a copy of your syllabus? And that just helps so much when we can look, I can look, sit down with the student, look to the syllabus and say, look, it's already clearly outlined from day one that this is the way in which we're going to communicate in this class. And that this is essentially a contract between the student and the instructor. So I think it's really important that you look at your syllabus and look to your faculty colleagues to maybe support you in the language. If you have questions, I'm happy to give you some samples that I've accrued that I think are ironclad. But I do think that's so important and that's so helpful to sit down with the student. Also too, for online, I know a lot of you have this practice, it's optional, but one of the ways in which you ensure that the student's participating in the class and in essence has shown up is that they take a quick little syllabus quiz, right? Well, in that so often is a question that says, you've read the syllabus. And so then I can say, well, you read and agreed to the syllabus. You took that quiz. The first week of the class. So those little, logistical measures really go a long way when the student has, for whatever reason, maybe gotten a little too creative and gone too far with their language in an online course.
So I heard Suki a couple times share that students will tell you when they have a problem. And in my own experience, I find that to be true as well. And sometimes I find comfort in the fact that a student is coming to me sharing, because I feel like they're still reaching out, they're still looking for help. Maybe they're not as dire as the person who's just sitting in the back corner and not saying a word and not asking for help. So I'm just curious if there's advice or tips when we feel like a student is in pain, like really hurting, what would be maybe the best thing we could say to someone? And what if they're not reaching out? Is there something that we should be looking for? I know, and you mentioned maybe their appearance has changed over time, but I am no expert, but in the years of just talking to counselors and learning that if a young person especially does not want you to know how they feel, you just won't know. Like they are really great at hiding their true feelings from people.
Got to push it really hard. I'm just going to give an example of, I had an experience like that where I had this student in my class who was really high performing. And about halfway through, they missed 2 classes. And then when they did show up, they were sitting different, they looked different, something on their face was different. I couldn't really identify, is something wrong, what's happening? So I just asked the student if they could stay after. I wanted to talk to them, really quickly. And I just said, you just look like you're a little unhappy. Is something going on? Not trying to intrude. If you don't want to tell me, you don't have to, but I want you to know that I care and I'm here. And if there's something going on that I can help you with, please let me know. And they ended up telling me that their mother had passed away. And I still keep in touch with that student to this day, but she hadn't really talked to a lot of people, and she was in a really severe depression, got her with services, got her some mental health support, and she ended up doing wonderful in the class. But I wonder, if I hadn't done that, because sometimes they're gonna say no, but what if they tell you? And so I think it's always good just to say, hey, are you okay? What's going on? I've noticed something, because even that you're noticing, that makes them feel important and it makes them feel cared for. Even if they decide not to tell you, that's important. So I would encourage that.
Okay, thank you. So how about, how do you differentiate between students who may be expressing distress or frustration versus those who pose a genuine threat? And I know that's something I hear from faculty often, like, you don't know if are they just a great student having a bad day, or is it something, bigger going on? So what proactive measures do you take to create a safe learning environment? And I think like Sumaya touched on that, like you start with the humanizing syllabus. We're all imperfect human beings in here. We're doing our best. But back to that, differentiating between frustration versus a real threat.
Everybody's looking at me. I don't know. I think you should look at these things as a priority, a hierarchy on these things. Your safety and the safety of others, I think, is paramount. So it's behavior that you're looking at. So you're going to know if it's a threat. It could be a veiled threat, but instinctively, you may not be able to articulate it, but you can have that feeling that this is threatening. This is threatening language, threatening behavior. That's something that you're going to have to address before anything else. And there may be reasons for that. I'm not saying there isn't. It could be because of the distress that student's going through. But I think we look at it from the campus police perspective, even law enforcement, is safety comes first. Once you address that, once you're in a comfortable environment, then you can start to address the cause, whatever the reason may be. But you can't do that if you're in a threatening position or feel threatened, right? So our recommendation is trust your instincts. If you think it's going to go bad, it's not looking good, give us a call, right? And we can talk with that person, and then we also do the referrals, give them resources. We work with the bid team. So our just so you know, when we hire our officers here on this campus, they come with 28 to 30 years of experience from the sheriff's department, right? So they're not looking to arrest people. That's for young kids, right? That's for young cops. They're more seasoned, they're veterans, they understand how things work, or they have a better understanding of the world. So the goal here is to be part of the community. That means helping students, helping staff, helping faculty. So we want to make sure that everybody's safe first. Once we can establish that, then we can work on the other things, right? And I think that's how you should look at it. And whatever those reasons or the causation factors are for that behavior, we have experts here that can do a great job on figuring those things out. So I highly recommend trusting your instincts and give us a call, and then we can go from there.
I just want to add, again, this is about reporting. So let's say you're not sure if it's a genuine threat. You just know that seems threatening, seems like this student is not behaving in a way that's appropriate and could escalate. Then when you report that, say that student's in 3 different classes, and we get 3 different reports, and then we go, okay, this might be a genuine threat, because this student has repetitive behaviors across campus that, they are not able to control their emotional responses or the way that they, their coping mechanisms. That helps us understand as a team that this is a bigger problem, because it's happening all over the place. So that's why, again, it's so important to report.
Sorry, so Chief Higa, he probably doesn't remember. We talked last spring, and when maybe he's like, yeah, I remember. But about a student, and Lisa knows the student, and Penny knows the student, but he asked me, and this is where I almost feel like it's unfair for faculty to think that they should be able to assess whether or not a student is a threat. Because I think there's also, I mean, it could be me, but my instinct is now I can handle it. And the conversation that I had with Chief Higa went as followed. Are you scared of him? And I said, well, he walks with a cane. And then I said, oh, well, a cane, but could be used as a weapon. But the thing is, it's like, I think that we are experts in math and English. We are not experts in assessing these students. And I think if there's, and I know this is tied to a later question, but if there's anything that I've learned in the last 20, 25 years, it's that it is not my job to be the person to decide whether or not this student is going to be okay. I can help the student, I can reach out to the student, but I am not the expert. We have these avenues that can, and support. And, you know, Lisa, sorry, Dr. Schenitzki, but I'm gonna just call you Lisa. Lisa has made time for me. We've sat down and talked for a good hour about a student just in terms of, you know, and again, because the student was different student, I just have so many fun students, but the student was putting her health on my shoulders and her mental well-being on my shoulders, and I didn't know how best to address it. And so Lisa was able to walk me through that. I think I'm done. Yeah, okay, go for it.
Comment real. I had a student last semester who, I guess a year ago, had been in a math class, and the teacher had called, or got the dean involved and got counseling involved because she was concerned about the student. I don't know if a student conduct, it must have been because the police were there on the day of the final exam because people were concerned about what might happen. And thankfully nothing happened, but just the instructor was nervous and so went through the procedures to contact who they're supposed to. And the student failed the course and then needed to register for the class again the next semester. And my dean called me and said, hey, do you have room for a student in your class? I was like, sure. And it wasn't until months later that I found out that it was the same student. But I'm really glad that I didn't know because it was a good student having a bad semester. And so I'm glad that I didn't have any preconceptions about him because he was a wonderful student, a wonderful person. And my colleague even said the same thing, like he started off great and then just something happened. You know, but when I had him, he was wonderful and he was a leader in the classroom and really supportive of me and of his classmates. And so I think it just goes to, even if you're not sure, go ahead and file the report because it's just showing that we care about our students, all of our students, the one that's in distress and everyone else that's in the classroom too.
I'd just like to add just one last thing. As we talk about questions being asked of people, understand that we look at whether or not a crime has been committed. And to look at to make that determination, we have to look at the law and find out what the elements of the crimes are, of that particular crime. And sometimes the questions we ask sound silly. Were you fearful? Is a very typical one because there's a lot of crimes that is an element because some people will say, well, no, it was just ridiculous, but you shouldn't have done that, right? I wasn't fearful. If we hear that statement, then we have to say we can't look at a particular crime, right? So we may ask questions that seem kind of silly and ridiculous, but unfortunately, we're trying to check the box to make sure that we didn't miss a crime and then we don't over-report a crime. We want to make sure that we provide you with the most accurate information, reference what's going on with you. Okay, thank you.
That's really interesting. I want to get to our questions, but I do want to highlight something with regard to faculty who travel with students. So for example, we have sports teams. I have a speech team in the communication studies department, and they have tournaments, and our coaches travel with them. And they feel a lot of responsibility supervising students 24 hours a day for 7 days a week and making sure that they're safe. But then the faculty also want to make sure they're protecting themselves. And so I know Suki travels with students, so Suki could speak to this, but also from Lisa, Jennifer, and Penny, and I did use first names. I hope that's okay. Just quickly in the last minute here, any tips you have for this 24/7 supervision?
I think one of the differences is we do have this team, but you are there first. And so you are going to be responsible in a way that you won't necessarily be responsible in a class on campus or in an online class. I mean, I think it's different for coach teams and stuff like that. But I was going to go in a different direction. I'm just going to cut it off. I think the other side of it, though, is that typically we have a better relationship with these students. Not better, but we know them better. We've interacted with them more often. And so I think about like just the last time I went to Oxford, just in terms of that change in behavior. The first week I had a student who I had her for 8 weeks and she was awesome. And then the first week in Oxford, she had her hood on and was like just face down in class every day. And so we were able to pull her aside and see what was going on with her. I think it's going to be different in that regard. With study abroad, we have support in place with the vendor that we work with, so it's not just that I'm working alone. The last time 2 times ago, I had a student who had said she was suicidal, and I wrote a care report, and we kind of worked through that. And basically, it was just keeping an eye on her. She ended up being fine. She's married now, so she's really great. But I think that really taking advantage, especially when we're away, taking advantage of the teams and the structures that are in place is the support, gives you the support so that you can then help the student.
They had trouble with students maybe drinking or partying. You have to keep that at bay, right?
Just want to add, set up expectations. So please put in writing what the expectations are. If you're in Oxford or you're in, Costa Mesa, off campus, the code of conduct applies. So just set up the expectation, have it in writing, particularly if you're traveling. I suggest that the student signs that so they have that. You have documentation and they know, unfortunately, what the consequences would be. So I think so important, set up the expectations.
I just want to add, I mean, I know we're not talking about Title IX right now at this town hall, but Title IX also applies when you're off campus. And so if you are going to be traveling or you have a group that you're doing something off campus with, you can always reach out to my office and we can do a presentation for the students as well to really tell them what Title IX is, what the expectations are, what's considered consent, what is not, all those kind of things, just to really set those parameters up as well.
I feel like I could ask a lot more questions. We're going to turn it over, and I saw a lot of hands earlier. Maybe we're going to have an encore presentation or something, because I feel like this is a hot topic for faculty. Okay, I'm letting Kim do the questions. The other Kim.
Okay, so if you have a question, I'm going to come around and put the microphone in your face. Okay, let's start here.
I work with the emeritus program at the college, and I had to, a student who came to me and said that I did a wellness checklist on the end of the class, and she came to me and said, crying, that she was distressed. She lived, the story. Then I said, I know the college has the care program, and I will find a way for you to be helped as a student. But when I call the care, I have to do a report. That's when, and my concern is how this will impact the student. Do I have to tell the students or not? And then the care program said, oh, it's anonymous. No, not in my class, because in that situation, the student knew that I was going to report. Then I heard from my division, as an advice, that we all teachers, we are reporters of any incident inside the class. So that whenever a student is reporting something, I should make sure that the students understand that I have to report, because it is an incident, it's something that she's sharing with me. And in this case, my concern was for the well-being of the student in their home, because I don't know how is the relationship with what's going on for her to be that way. So that's why, and then I contacted the care, and I made the report, and everything is going. But for me, that was a good advice, to make sure that as the students are telling me, to tell them, I want to let you know that as your students, I care for you and I have to report this to my supervisor or someone. My question, what about the students say, no, I don't want you to, I just want you to know. So I had that question and answer too. And I said, I am not, as you said, I am not a psychologist. I don't have expertise, but I care for you and I want you to be helped. So for me to call you guys yesterday was phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Perfect. So yeah, so I think the question is, what do you do if the student says, no, don't tell?
Yes, because they are afraid of consequences of being reported.
Sure. So there's a couple points I'd like to make. One is faculty are mandated reporters for child abuse and Title IX concerns. So those, you don't have a choice. When it comes to, and domestic violence, I'm not sure if this was a domestic violence type situation, falls under Title IX. So, yeah, I mean, as faculty, all managers are required to report incidences of Title IX to the Title IX office. That can be done through a phone call, through a care report, a Title IX report. So those ones, you don't have a choice. When you're concerned about the well-being of a student, and it's not one of those concerns, and you submit a care report, it comes to our offices and it gets sent to the appropriate person on campus to reach out to that student. And the way we do that is we call them up, ideally we get them on the phone, and we say, we've received what's called a care report for you. Do you know what a care report is on our campus? And sometimes they say yes. Yes, my professor told me they were going to submit a care report for me, and they're anxiously awaiting resources, right? Sometimes they say no. And so we just take a moment to sort of educate them a little bit. And we say a care report can be submitted by anyone in the campus community anytime there's a concern about one of our students and their well-being. And when we receive a care report, we reach out. We want to find out how you're doing, if you're doing okay, and connect you with resources that we have on campus or in the community that might be helpful. And so we don't, for care reports, as Penny noted, we don't say it was, submitted by Susie Bouquet. But a lot of times the students can guess, oh, that must have been my, maybe they're only taking one class, right? Or maybe they remember that they mentioned something, so they might put two and two together. So it's not necessarily guaranteed anonymous, but we do not, provide the name of the person because it's not really necessary. It's just a concern about your well-being, and we want to reach out and we want to help you, get you connected with some resources that might be helpful to you.
Thank you. Another question? I know we saw a bunch of Maria.
First of all, I want to thank all of you for supporting the students and the faculty and helping us to navigate all of this. And I'm very grateful. I recently had a Title IX incident. But what my question is, there was another faculty member in my department who filed a care report that then became a code of conduct report. And this faculty member mentioned, or was curious about what is the protocol in terms of following up and letting the faculty member know that that has happened. And has the student been, did you reach out to the student? Did the student respond? What's the protocol for the follow-up?
So what we try to do is when it's it's submitted as a care or even informal, then Lisa, she and I are very much partners in all of this. So then we will try to reach out to the faculty to let them know that based on the information provided or maybe additional information that had been reported previously, so it's not the first time, the student's information has come to our attention, then we reach out to the faculty to say that we're elevating this, that we need to elevate this to code of conduct and that it's not a care. And, thus far, knock on wood, we've had the experience where the faculty member is open to that because we assure them it's in the best interest of everyone that we treat this as a code of conduct. So.
Thank you.
Can we add a
I
little
want
bit?
to add on to that just a second. We have an automatic email reply that goes out to anyone who submits a care or a discipline report, and we've added a step to our process recently, and that is we discuss each case in our team meetings, as Dr. LaBounty mentioned, and then when we decide we're going to close a case, we've added a step to our protocol where the person who submitted the report is then notified with an additional email of what the outcome was. And for care reports, that can be either we were able to make contact with the student, we provided them with resources. Sometimes the follow-up email is despite multiple attempts to try to make contact with the student, we were unable to do so. Just so you know, right? So how come they didn't get those resources we were hoping they were going to get? Well, it's because we weren't able to get, in touch with them. Or the third option is we made contact with the student and they declined the resources that we offered to them. So just so faculty has a little bit of follow-up, faculty or staff, whoever submits a report does know ultimately when we close it what the outcome was.
Okay, Scott.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for all this information. This is very helpful. And my question relates to if you decide to submit a care report, is there any follow-up with the instructor in terms of gaining some type of personal perspective other than what the report provides before contacting the student?
It depends. In most cases, we sort of have a picture of what's going on. Oftentimes, we will look at any other records we have for that student. Maybe it's health records. Maybe we always look at my site and see, are they currently enrolled? What is their course load like? What does their transcript look like? So we gather a little bit of information for a care report, and usually we kind of take it from there and reach out. Sometimes, though, a little bit more context might be needed, a little bit more clarification might be needed, in which case we'll reach out to the person who submitted the care report.
Okay.
My follow-up to that would be if I feel as an instructor that I need to talk to you and give you more insight than what I'm able to put down in the care report, how would you address that? I mean, how should we address that?
I would say to try as best you can to provide as much context and information in the body of the report as possible. You can also attach emails, you can add attachments to the care report, and that's always very helpful. And then ultimately, if there's things that you're for some reason unable to add to the care report, you could always give us a call. Always.
Okay, so I think in the interest of time, because this ends at 3 and we want to be respectful of everybody's time, if you have further questions, because I know there were a bunch of hands, would it be okay if they contact Kim and Kim will filter out the questions to the committee? So if you do have any further questions, please email Kim. She'll give you her email address. Maybe on a board, maybe. She'll give you her email address. And then really quickly, just a big plug, a big thank you for all the panelists today. So give them a big hand. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to Kim being our awesome moderator. Thank you so much for attending today. Thank you.